Again, welcome to Teaching Artist Programs, Questions and Answers. This is a Triangle Artworks presentation. For those of you who have not participated in our programs in the past, I'm going to make a few announcements here at the beginning. First of all, I want to welcome all of you. We've got some great presenters today. We're going to learn about teaching artist programs in the Triangle. And this program is being recorded. It will be featured on our YouTube channel for those that couldn't participate. We did have several people who signed up and let me know that they couldn't be here. I also see some faces of some folks I'm really happy to see here today, and it makes me just really excited about all of you getting this information. So if you have not yet done so, I think everybody has changed their screen name to their regular screen name. You can also take a moment if you'd like to add in the chat information about your website or your Instagram or however else you would like other folks to know about you and your work. One of the great things about these programs is they give you as an artist a chance to come together with other artists, especially right now when we're all isolated and a lot of our in-person things haven't 100% resumed. It's really great. So take a moment if you want to introduce yourself in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our roundtable panelists, I guess. I'm probably mixing up two things. You don't have panelists on a roundtable, but we're just going to say that. So first of all, I'd like to introduce very quickly Julia, Shayna, Beverly, and Cynthia. My name is Cynthia. I'm Cynthia Dice with Triangle Artworks, but we have a much more interesting Cynthia here today. So let's start first with Shana Adams. She's the director of the Durham Arts Council's Creative Arts in Public and Private Schools. It's called the CAPS program. That is the Durham Arts Council's Teaching Artist program. Our second person that we have here today is Julia Mastropaolo. I apologize, Julia, if I did not pronounce your name correctly. She's the Arts Education Coordinator at the United Arts Council of Raleigh and Wake County, and she also runs their Teaching Artist program for artists in schools. Cynthia Harrell is a potter and a painter who's been participating in teaching artist programs for many years. She's actually been teaching art since 1996. She's got years of experience. And then finally, we have Beverly Boxford, who is a cross-cultural percussionist and educator, and she has been teaching art as well since the 90s. So we've got four really great resources here for you today, artists. What we're going to do is they're going to talk and answer some questions and talk to each other. They're also going to have the opportunity to answer your questions, though. So if you have any specific questions for our panelists, you can pop them in the chat. That will let them know what to expect and what to talk about. We're also going to have some question and answer time towards the end, so don't feel like you won't have a chance to hear your voice. We also have a poll. So there's a lot of things going to be going on today. I'll show you how to use all these things. If you're not familiar with these Zoom features, let's start with the chat. So that is a little chat bubble, just like a texting bubble that you're going to see down towards the bottom of your screen, probably, or on the right-hand side or the left-hand side. You just click on that and it opens up the chat. I'll tell you at the end of the event today how to download it so you can save this whole conversation. And so I'm going to start by turning it over to Shayna to fully introduce herself so you can know a little bit more about what she does.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shayna Adams. I direct the CAPS Artist in Schools program at the Durham Arts Council and been doing that for about 15 years now. The CAPS program started around 49 years ago. And we place teaching artists in the community, but primarily in schools in Durham, Orange County, Granville County, and Alamance. And really happy to be here to be a resource to all of you. Thank you for being here.
So, and next we'd love to hear from you, Julia, if you could tell us about your program.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being with us today. I agree with Shayna. It's really nice to spend time with you all. I'm in my third year, 3.5 years with United Arts Council. Their Artisan Schools program is over 40 years old. It's unique in that we involve volunteers from each school to help us run our program. We have about 200 volunteers that act as the liaison back to their schools. We work with public, we work with private, we work with charter. Any school that wants to work with us within the Wake County boundaries, they are eligible to. And we have certain systems that they may go through. We have a teaching artist roster of about 100 artists. I see a couple of them other than Beverly are on this call. Hello. Just happy to continue on and talk about your needs as we go on today.
Wonderful. So Cynthia, tell us about your work and your experience in the Teaching Artist programs.
Hi, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here today and to see all of you. I do recognize some of the names and faces, so I'm just excited to be here with you all. My name is Cynthia Harrell, and I am a potter. I'm a painter, and I'm a physical therapist. And for years, I've worked as a physical therapist and retired in 2019 from Duke University Health Systems. I have worked as an artist since as long as I can remember. And the 1996 sounds about right when I actually started to teach. The thing that may be a little different from what you guys are doing or trying to do as a teaching artist, when I started teaching, I was not being paid to teach. I was teaching because I loved teaching what I was doing. I loved teaching painting at that time. I taught watercolor, oil paintings, and acrylic painting. And I did that out of my own home studio. And it was a studio where I would actually work and sell my paintings and teach. And it was a home studio. So that's what I started doing in 1996, actually, when I actually started to teach. I worked as a physical therapist for several years, not only at Duke, but in the school system, in the Durham public school system. And as a physical therapist with the school system, I had the incredible opportunity to also work with the CAPS program. I worked with artists who were presenting in the school system as an adjunct to what they were doing to assure inclusion for students who may not be able to fully participate in a program. For example, I worked with several, but one was a bookmaker. She would make the books with the students, and I would go into the classroom to make sure that the students who may have some physical or fine motor or gross motor impairments, that they could actually participate. Another was a Chinese artist who actually brought in Chinese history and used this dragon as the climactic ending of his session. And so it was really a great thing for me as a therapist to also participate in the arts. So I often incorporated that as I worked as a therapist. Teaching was always a part of what I did. And then in 2019, I actually wanted to become, as my advocation and my livelihood, I wanted teaching artistry to become that. And so I started working more directly with the Durham Arts Council, and it has been tremendous, an opportunity that I have loved, and a great chance to work with kids. So we can talk more about what I'm actually doing as we move forward.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Cynthia. And Beverly, we'd love to hear a little bit more about you and what you do in schools and your experience as a teaching artist.
Hi, everybody. To many of my old friends and all of my new, I'm thrilled and honored to be here today. I can testify to the power and the blessings and the gifts of sharing your work with youth. I dreamed from I borrowed that from Baba Chuck Davis, who's one of my mentors. I bought my first conga in like 1975. And in the 80s, I had the opportunity to join the African American Dance Ensemble. And I had the blessing of being mentored by Baba Chuck Davis, who was really instrumental in helping actually, the foundation of how teaching artistry developed, particularly in the dance world, and through many different programs in the NEA, and the foundation of how to make your work connected to community. And I actually worked in CAPS in 1984. There was this incredible program, and I will say that CAPS is a leader in arts integration, truly a trailblazer. I was part of a program called Arts Africa, and it involved Baba Chuck and his company going into schools, doing a performance. It involved myself and Annie Dwyer, who's also a mentor of mine teaching, and Sharon Price, who was part of Chuck's company, going into schools and doing a dance class so that the students are like in it, like fully in their bodies in it. And then the third component was we went to the National Museum of Art, which was at a different location at that time. And the students looked at all the artwork. They were guided by, I'm talking about working with African culture. They were guided by docents, and then they came into a space in the art museum, and we actually taught them a dance class. And I had the opportunity to play these instruments that were part of their art collection. And it was so multidisciplinary, so expansive in really a core of what a lot of arts integration really is about. And for me is my desire to actually make a living as a percussionist, white girl from Charlotte, North Carolina, who loves African rhythms. Okay. Find your way, be who you are. And teaching artistry has made it so that I could survive. It has been the real anchor of my income throughout touring all over the world with the fabulous Nina Freelon, working with Baba Chuck, doing whatever kind of work. For me, it's always been an anchor of how I make a living. It's there. You continue to grow. There's always more to learn. Woo! Many lessons, no matter how long you've been in it, but also a really important branch of how you give yourself to the world. Why do we even do any of this? We want to build a better future. We want to build a better world. And to me, this is like just a core component of how you do that. That's it.
Thank you, Beverly. That was great. It's so interesting to hear about all of your programs and both your work and Cynthia's work in the schools. And you know, I think like many artists, you come from teaching from a place of love, but the reality is we can love something, but we do have to pay some bills sometimes. So that's how these teaching artist programs can be helpful.
Well, yeah, love first.
Right, exactly. Love first, but you know. So I would love now to ask Julia and Shayna, the two of you, if you could talk a little bit about where the current programs are. I know that a lot of artists are have a lot of questions right now about that because, you know, schools were online. We're not sure what's happening next year, you know. So I don't know which one of you would like to start on that, but just talking a little bit about where the programs are now. So, and where they're going to be for this next school year. Shayna, you want to pipe up first?
Sure. So, yeah, the pandemic hit, and in March, all of the schools shut down, all of our programming shut down, and we didn't know what we were going to do immediately, but everyone just sort of came together organically, and we started to figure out plans. We took all of our programming, well, most of our programming online. And this process started, I would say, fully in May. We also worked really closely with Durham Public Schools primarily, but gradually some of the other counties came in and said, hey, we want to make sure that these arts programs continue. Some of them continued during the summer because many CAPS artists just sort of started to create programming. They didn't want students to go without programming in the summer. They created videos, pre-recorded content, and also content that students could communicate and be with other students in the virtual realm. Artists like Mimi Herman, Charles Petty, many others. And we actually compiled a lot of these programs in an at-home with CAPS link system, where we could link to YouTube, Facebook, and wherever these programs were happening. And then we shifted and started working with the school system. And they said, you know, we want these programs to happen. What can you do? And so then our artists were incredible. I mean, we all didn't know what to do. We had to learn Zoom. We had to learn how to deliver things virtually, but we all learned together. We helped each other. Some people knew more, some people knew less, but we created virtual spaces where we could learn together. We shared other resources that were offered locally and regionally and nationally. And so far we've had around 150 virtual programs happen this year. And we've reached, I think by the end of this school year, we would have reached around 1,600 students. We usually reach around 29,000, but I would say that's going to be fantastic for for it being a year of something we have never experienced before. So I just want to say that our partners really came through, but I also just want to celebrate our teaching artists, because everybody got creative, everybody just helped each other, and we made it happen.
Yeah, I echo everything Shayna just said. I've celebration of the teaching artists for doing what they do best, creating and figuring it out and finding solutions. And it's just been really impressive to watch. We had a very similar situation when the pandemic hit. Before the pandemic, we were doing over 400 programs a year. And last year it hit. Around this time last year, we piloted our first virtual experience, and that was with writer Michael Beadle at Wiley Elementary. And we had no idea how it was going to go. Fortunately, Michael has worked with Wiley Elementary and their teachers for many, many years. So all of those partners felt very strongly that they could figure it out together. And they did. And it was wildly successful. And I'm happy to report that just last week, Michael returned to Wiley Elementary, but he was there in person. So we see the light at the end of the tunnel, everyone. It just is amazing to me that we've been able to accomplish what we have. This year, so far, we've got about 240 programs when it's all said and done that will happen. That's 150 performances that have either been done pre-recorded or they've been done online, so virtually, but live. A couple of the artists here with us today have been able to figure out how to do that. 60 workshop residencies and 31 weeks of writer residencies this year. Now, some of those programs were programs that were rescheduled from last year. So our numbers are lower than they have been for many years, and we anticipate that may continue on for a bit. But we're really pleased that we've been able to do what we could do, and that all the partners trusted each other enough to try and learn new systems and just invest whatever they could to make it work. That's the big takeaway. And the takeaway that some really powerful moments can still happen in these programs, even virtually. There can still be that engagement factor. There can still be so many takeaways for those students and their teachers, as well as the teaching artists. So we've just been really pleased. We want to grow more. We want to get all of our teaching artists back to work. But we think we've made some good steps forward throughout the entire process.
It makes me so happy that you're saying that they were able to go back to school, Julia and Shayna. It's exciting to hear what has been happening. So again, folks, if you have specific questions for for anyone that's participating in this, you can definitely pop those in the chat. But right now, I'd like to open up the conversation to Beverly and to Cynthia about what have you been able to accomplish over this last year with students, and sort of what you feel like you would hope to do in the coming years. I'd like to go ahead and start with Cynthia. What do you think, what were you able to accomplish this past school year? What do you think you're going to be able to accomplish this next year?
Yeah,
And I'm going to launch the, oh, sorry, Cynthia, I forgot to mention, I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll, folks. You don't have to take it right now, but it will be available. Just take it sometime before the end of the event. I should have done it right at the beginning. Sorry, Cynthia, I just didn't want to forget.
Yeah, because I think that would be great. But then I'm recognizing some of the folks on here, so I have an idea probably what some of these answers are. But yeah, this has been indeed a challenging year. And one of the things that I offer, I offered the coordination program for kids that's more based on physical therapy, my physical therapy experience, and I also offer the pottery classes. And so when you look at offering pottery virtually, it's like, how do you do that? When to me, the tactile and the sensory aspect of it is so important. How can I possibly offer it? I initially thought I cannot. And then I started to get requests from teachers saying, could you just do a demo? And just, talk to them, so I would get at the wheel and I would throw something and demo and talk about it. And the kids would get really excited. And then I'd ask them, well, how do you want to finish it? And, then they'll tell me that they want to see it get smaller and then bigger. They'll just tell me what they wanted. And then I got excited about it. And we started to talk about the different things that you can do with clay, not just throwing. Even though they thoroughly enjoyed that first session where I was throwing and they were directing the throwing, how we finished the edge, whether we closed it in. We talked about the different terms that were used when you were throwing. What does throwing, why did you say throwing? All kinds of things. So we had great conversations. And then I showed them things that I had done that were not throwing. Some of it was hand building. Some of it wasn't hand building so much, but drawing onto clay or painting clay or structural things made in clay. So I just shared even jewelry, like this piece here. I showed them jewelry that I had made using clay, and talked about firing methods. So it was great. And then I thought, well, that's about all we'll be able to do. And then someone asked for a pottery session. I usually do fired clay, and so I thought, how we're going to do distribution. Then we decided, ultimately, after talking, we would do air dried clay. And so I found a really good air dried clay that had the consistency of the clay that we would fire. I don't like the modeling clay. That's just not clay. So we put together packets and distributed it, and it was a wild success. I had to learn Zoom, did not know much about Zoom, and operating, all that, coordinating with the liaison from the schools and the teachers, finding out what their curriculum needs were, that they want to coordinate this with what they were teaching, looking at the essential standards or whatever that they were looking at, whether we were trying to integrate this into science or math or whatever we were doing. So we had all of those preliminary discussions, decided on a project, executed the project. And at first, all of the students were on Zoom. And then as time moved on, some of the kids were in the school and half the kids were at home. So then we had to kind of work through that. So there was a lot of coordination, a lot of communication between myself and the schools and with the Durham Arts Council, who was helping to coordinate all this stuff. So that has been challenging for me. I'm learning that I can do this. And for the future, I really want to move toward some pre-recorded instruction. and see how that would go, because that is something that I think that would be very beneficial. It would allow me to reach more students. And also it would be an income stream. As we were talking, what I'm learning is that a lot of teaching artists make about $10,000 a year in terms of a contribution to their total income and livelihood for the year. And so I'm thinking, you know, how can you maximize what you do? If you're looking at doing this as your advocation, you can't live off $10,000 a year. So I thought, I don't know how to make this work. So those are things that I'm developing at this point, not just so much the teaching. Well, the teaching artistry also, because as Beverly said, you're always learning, you're always growing, you're always developing what it is that you're doing. But I think that that love that you have trumps everything else that you do. And that's why we do it, because we love it so. Most of us have taught and served without pay because we love it. It's passion. How do you get paid for passion? And then you realize, oh, if this is my income stream, I need to get paid for what it is that I'm doing. And then I think artists sometimes, maybe we can talk about that. Sometimes it's artist, and as an artist, sometimes that kind of gets mixed up. And I don't know if anybody else has experienced that or not, but sometimes that's not always clear in terms of how you move forward, in terms of using your art as and it becoming the source of your livelihood. But yeah, so that's what I'm hoping to do. Maybe some online videos, some pre-recorded information that will help me expand it to not just the people that I'm talking to immediately. And also I'm finding that there's a big need in some of the underserved schools that I'd like to address. So we're looking at different avenues for, the more I do this, the more I see where the needs are. And I'd like to be a part of the solution for that.
Well, thank you, Cynthia. I agree with you. I think that that's something that we here at Triangle Artworks a lot, that artists need to understand sort of how they can put those things together to make that a paid career. Like, as you said, I think that's what we're all about, definitely. So, and I definitely want to hear from you, Beverly. But before, I just want to mention that we did have some folks are interested in, I'm noticing this in the polling and in a couple of chat questions, in sort of understanding how payment actually works for teaching artist programs. So Julia and Shayna just kind of put that in your brains to come back to after we talk to Beverly. Or Beverly, maybe you can talk a little bit about that, about how you've been paid as a teaching artist. But I want to hear first how you actually have, how it's worked for you for this last year.
Funny you should ask. I'm going to leave the pay part to our pay guides. It's been a year of growth for everybody, and I want to honor that everybody has growth in different ways and different challenges. I am not a digital native, so my biggest challenge is around technology. I have developed my entire sort of approach to teaching through interactive rhythms, basically. A lot of call and response. Rhythm is the core of the tool that I use to share who I am, and more importantly, teach the art form and make connections to curriculum. So when all this happened, as we know, rhythm and Zoom are not good friends. They are absolutely, and I'm still trying to figure out how to get them at least in a friendly working relationship with each other. It was certainly a shock the first times trying, because of, the reality of latency. So I started teaching a little bit in the spring. I actually lost my niece in the summer. I just went into let's call it COVID hibernation. And I have been slower at jumping back in. One is that I've been on a mission to explore and learn technology skills and figure out how do I translate who I am effectively in this virtual world. And it came to me very quickly that the only way for me to really do it musically is to do pre-recorded videos, because at least on YouTube or on some other platform, you don't have the latency issues and you've got at least music quality.
Right.
So I am actually in the middle of like working through that. And it's been very humbling, exciting, challenging. It is a completely different language. I speak the language of music. I speak the language of rhythm. I'm cool with the language of movement. I'm cool with the language of teaching and the language of school culture. The language of virtual is new for me. This summer, I started learning how to use iMovie a bit. I'm actually working on the pre-recorded videos, and we'll see how all that works. It has started to occur to me that the investment in any of this is important because it'll always be there to supplement what you do in the future. And the pre-recorded videos, I'm realizing also this is like a documentation of what I've developed, a little piece of it, what I've developed for sharing myself in schools. And that documentation will still be there. And the part that excites me most is that the more I do it, the more I start to see possibilities of like, wow, I could just do a whole segment just on the talking drum. Or, and realizing that being able to share from home has this great potential that I never really thought about that much before, because I have a house full of instruments. It's the palace of percussion. I have instruments nobody has ever seen that I would never want to haul out of the house. And it's just a really, really exciting potential. And I think that even to supplement an in-person Zoom or to supplement going back into schools, that this is a really valuable tool. And aside from it's a way to reach wider audiences with no limits globally of what it can be. That's the short version. I have been doing a few Zooms and have just surrendered to, there's a certain reality of, oh, why did my computer try to update its software without me telling it 15 minutes before the class is supposed to start? Like, and pre-recording is the very same thing. It's like insane. I'm telling you, oh, what's that scratchy sound in the mic? Man, that's in all the cuts we just did for the last hour. Oh, my earring is bouncing against the wire on my headset. It is an exercise in patience, in determination, in perseverance, in pulling yourself back to the big picture and why you do it. And speaking of those qualities, I want to honor Shayna and Julia, because through this whole pandemic, the leadership that you have shown in this insanity of like, you don't know what's going to happen. How do you plan for something that's unplannable? And both of you really have just been rock solid at like just kind of like stabilizing the ship.
That's so
even
true.
though none of us know what's going to happen. So I really appreciate that. And also your flexibility of some of us move in different times, in different directions, in different ways. And particularly like support from the Arts Council for the Durham Arts Council of like helping with acknowledging that like, oh yeah, this is a big expense for artists if you want to do a create pre-recorded options. And onward and upward, like we're students. I am completely a humbled, wearing the student shoe.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Beverly. And that is great. A few people echoed it in the chat that technology is a struggle.
For some of us, especially.
Yeah, I think for many, it's always changing. I do want to get back to
I think it's
Shayna and
important
Julia.
also.
Oh, go ahead, Julia.
I was going to say, I recognize there's some art forms that really can't transition, but the ones that could, many of them have been able to figure out, and the ones that can't, we're just really ready to get back at it, where teaching artists and students and teachers are all together again. And while I do think that is continuing to be something we can look to next year, there are a few events that are taking place other than the one I mentioned about Michael Beadle. We've got a couple of other things happening, but ultimately the goal is to get back together in one place. And virtual will remain for a time, but I think really everyone's ready to get back and be together.
Well, so I would love to go, Julia and Shayna, to talking about, we had that prior question about who pays for the programs. And then I would like to tie that in with sort of how many opportunities do you think there will be for this upcoming year? And maybe even for the upcoming next few years. Do you feel like it's going to be back? Like you said, Julia, people are itching to get back to normal. I know that in the non-artisan schools, but with many performing artists and other artists, they're really expecting a huge sort of uptick as people just get really excited to get back out. You know, people don't want to miss an opportunity. How do you feel? First of all, how are people going to get paid? How are those opportunities looking? And how many of those opportunities do you think that there actually will be in these upcoming years? So Julia and Shayna, you two have to maybe.
Yeah, so
Shayna's going to take it.
So thanks, Cynthia. So our payment is pretty set. We want our teaching artists to set their own fees, and we do give a range because of the capacity of funding that the schools have. But you can set your own fees, and we need to add a management fee at the Durham Arts Council, and this takes care of some of the program management and background checks and things like that. But that management fee, which is so sometimes, doesn't take care of the whole program. We still have to raise so much more funding and grants to even have the CAPS program. So, but yes, we pay you through the Arts Council. We contract with our partners, with our partner schools, with private schools, with community groups, senior centers, whoever is interested in bringing you to their realm. We would contract with them, contract with you, and make sure you're paid. And so we're going to be working a lot more over the summer to reassess the CAPS program, since everything is different now. So I feel like this is a really good time to reassess, to bring everybody to the table so that we can make sure there's equity across the board, equity for the schools, serving all schools, all economic ranges, and serving all artists, and making sure that there's a bit more equity between the Arts Council, teaching artists, schools, community partners.
So for our program, as I mentioned earlier, we involve the cultural arts reps, which are the liaison to each school. And they, along with their PTA, provide a portion of the funding for each of our programs. So United Arts will provide small grants toward each program, up to 4 programs per school, but then the school is responsible for coming up with the remainder of the fee. We also have artists set their own fees. We definitely want to make sure that an artist is thinking about what they could offer that compensates themselves properly, but also make sure that they're finding that balance that schools can afford to bring them in. the schools decide which artists they would like to work with, and United Arts just acts as that partner to help connect the two and work together. United Arts, when the school decides on an artist and they sign a contract, the school sends their portion of the fee to United Arts, and we hold on to that fee until the event happens. Then we go through a post-program survey process, and once all of the information and data is collected back about the event, we add our grant money to the school's money and we pay the artist directly.
Thank you, Julia and Shayna. So staying on this idea of funding and how you have to get funding, we did have someone in the chat who asked about, are there any advocacy opportunities that artists could themselves engage in, particularly with the Arts Recovery Fund, or perhaps reaching out to their local, any of the funding organizations? This is also a great time, Shayna and Julia, for you to mention your social media or anything like that that you want artists to know about, to follow, so that they can learn about opportunities. Like, how can they hear about opportunities like this?
I would say Arts and C for advocacy purposes. If you get on their mailing list, they're always sending out ways to advocate for the funding to be directed towards artists and smaller arts organizations. Some of our arts recovery funds have already been designated out to artists and to teaching artists to support content creation and technology, but these funds are continuing to flow, and so our Arts Council is still working to make decisions on how that funding will be used, and we'll definitely need input from teaching artists, from all of our instructors and partners.
I agree. Social media, watching our social media, checking our website. There have been several programs that our organization has been involved with. And so that's the best way to find out what has happened and what will be happening along the way. Again, Arts NC is a great place to look, and just staying up on what's happening across the country, not only looking at your own community arts council, but what's happening in the bigger picture of artistry and teaching artistry.
Well, thank you both. We've had a question in the chat too about any kind of non-refundable portions of contracts. This is a great question, actually, Jeanette. And this was by Jeanette. I'm sorry to call you out, but Jeanette Brossart asked this, Shayna and Julia. So I don't know if you want to get her to clarify a little bit, get them to clarify a little bit more, but it just about, I think this is probably related to some pandemic losses, correct, Jeanette? Having to cancel programs. So Julia and Shayna, is there any, we also live in a state with hurricanes. Like, is there any kind of situation in contracts that allows for artists to make sure they haven't lost a lot of their planning time?
I will add that
for United,
I just will add that United Arts and CAPS both were willing to work with me in particular. I can speak in general, but it would be nice to see something specific in a contract moving forward.
Yes, so United Arts last year, when the pandemic hit, we were able to release our grant funds to any artist that was contracted through the end of last school year. Because we have that other element where the schools have provided a portion of the funding, that's not really our funding to release at that moment. And so we went back to the schools and said, are you willing to reschedule into next year? Do you need to just forfeit to the artist? What can we do? And we've sort of, as Jeanette just mentioned, we've been able to baby step through the whole process. What can be rescheduled? What solution can be employed at what time? And we've just taken that approach all year. As now systems are opening up and we are seeing that some of the artists can get back in school, that's starting to happen. We've rescheduled over 90 programs, I think, this year, and we have about 30 more that still could reschedule. And so every week we're trying to see what school can we get to agree to go ahead and do something? What artist is ready to provide that program? And we're slowly ticking that list down and moving to a different level if we need to. But for now, our goal was to try to get as many of them through in some form or fashion as we could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would have to echo what Julia said. Same scenario. We were able to do some of our programming virtually by rescheduling those programs that were ended by COVID starting in March. But some of the funding we could not use or designate because it belonged to other parties. So I don't know if we would be able to create a protection like that, but it's something I think that we could address with our different partners when we create our contracts with our partners, because I do feel like this is very important to have going forward.
Yeah, I would appreciate to continue the conversation because it's, a contract is a contract, and even though trying to make it work and compromise is a wonderful thing that I definitely agree should be part of our human landscape. But at the same time, if the situations were reversed, there might not have been as much understanding and willing to compromise on a contractual agreement that's on a piece of paper is within those four, with the words on the paper are the words on the paper. So right. I would hope and suggest and would be happy to continue the conversation of encouraging arts organizations to look at the language and be sure that it actually does protect the parties, all parties involved, including the schools and your organizations as kind of a liaison. So thank you for your comments.
And I also wonder if there are insurances that I don't know. I just don't know all of what can happen in that regard, but definitely we should continue the conversation to figure out how that can happen.
I think that was a great question, Jeanette. Thank you very much for bringing that up. So I do want, we've got a little less than 8 minutes left, and I do want to respect everyone's time here. So I'd like to open it up now for folks that if there's a question that someone didn't ask in the chat and someone wants to, there are not so many of us here that I couldn't say somebody could just literally like physically raise your hand and then unmute yourself. Does anybody have any questions, anything that you feel like we haven't had covered? You've got some great people here to ask questions of. So does anyone have a question that they'd like to ask? Oh, Phil raised his hand. Phil did the virtual hand raise, so.
Yeah, so when people are chosen for the residency in a school, what is kind of the usual structure for, their curriculum or what they'll be teaching the students?
Yeah, so Philip, we traditionally have artists propose programs in the application process. However, a lot of programs do get sort of structured once they're booked. So there's some flexibility in that it doesn't have to be completely ready, and you can work with teachers to build in the curriculum, make sure that it's connecting in with what they are covering or doing at the time of the residency. And so that can happen in the orientation period with teachers. just sort of planning up into the residency. Did that answer your question, sort of?
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate that. And also, how long are the residencies? Because I've never done this before, but I am very interested in, applying for residency. So.
Sure. So typically residencies happen between 2 and 5 and even longer period of time, contact days with students. And it really just depends on what you're covering and what you want the end result to be. And so you would be able to structure it that way. I always recommend, if possible, to have a shorter experience for schools that would need that and may need that for affordability purposes, and then something that's a bit longer.
I agree. Our programs tend to be 5 days or less. There are residencies that are 10 days or longer even, and those are fabulous. But for a school in our district to invest the finances for a program that large and to invest the time of the students, it's just not something we see very often. So our writer residencies have to be 5 days. Our workshop residencies we leave open, and while an artist could suggest a 10-day residency, the majority of them would be 2-day, 3-day, maybe 5-day at the most. We offer a performance category, a workshop residency category, and then the writer residency category are the ways that artists connect in with us. Similar to Durham, artists propose programs. We don't necessarily accept artists on our roster, we accept their programs. So some artists may have only one program, other artists may have 4 or 5 programs, but each one of those programs has to go in front of a panel that includes school system contacts, artists, those cultural arts reps that I mentioned a few minutes ago, and arts administrators to approve that that is a program that could fit within the school structure and meets a number of other criteria that would help schools know that that program could be successful in their own school.
I'll just say that the word residency, it has a lot of flexibility and it's used in a lot of different shapes and forms. So it's good to inquire with the particular organization you're working through, what guidelines they have. There are also residencies that come sometimes through the State Arts Council that have really specific requirements where you have to see the same class every day for 5 days and have 5 contact hours with the same students. And so it depends on which organization and what the guidelines are for that particular, method of payment or people who are hiring you.
Cynthia, go ahead. You're muted, Cynthia.
I just wanted to say that I'm just really glad to see you on this forum, Philip, because there are a lot of schools that I've worked with and that I'm hoping to work with in the future who I know will benefit from your presence, just your physical presence, because they will identify with you. And that's one of the things that I'm hoping as a teaching artist. I find that a lot of times I don't see a lot of African American. I see some, but whenever I see a new face that I haven't seen before, I like to encourage you to just continue. And I want to let you know that we're really encouraged to have you here today. And there's a place for you to work with the students. I don't know what your art form is, but actually that's not the thing. It's the fact that teaching artistry is about learning. And kids learn. So we're teaching, so they obviously, hopefully there's some learning taking place. And asking that question, what if? And kids look at you and they can ask that question, what if? What if I participated? What if I were to move in a different direction? So I just wanted to encourage you and say, thanks for being here.
Of course, thank you. So I do photography, but I also did speak to a small group of high schoolers. A friend of mine, Anthony Patterson, he's in Durham and he does a lot of work. He's a visual artist, and I think he did it through the documentary studies program, but I think it was called CDS or some, I forgot the initials, but I had to do a Zoom call with some high schoolers. So I'm familiar with it. And kids kind of just usually just look at me and think I look cool. So I'm very cool with, talking with them and doing stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to be getting involved.
But great.
Yes, Philip, we're working on our application process, but keep in touch because summer will open our application.
I actually added you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, this is actually a great time for, for Cynthia, Beverly, Julia, Shayna, if you want to pop your contact information in the chat, just so everyone has it. It is one, I don't have to go anywhere, but in case anyone needs to leave, I just need to make my closing statements, and then we could stay on and have a few more questions. I don't want to hold anybody past when they can't be here, but again, this will be on the Triangle Artworks YouTube channel. We'll get it up as soon as we can. We'll be putting it in our newsletter and on our site. I will also annotate that video with some of the links that we've discussed here. So if you're watching this on the YouTube video later on, don't stress out, try and just read the comments and see if you can find the links that you need. Also, I do want to thank very much Shayna Adams, Julia Mastropaolo, Cynthia Harrell, and Beverly Boxford for being here today. The four of you really helped us have a really strong conversation about this. I also want to thank all of the artists that joined us today. Some of you are new faces to me. Some of you are familiar faces that I've seen in a lot of our Triangle Artworks programs. I want to thank you for all you do for the arts community in our community, the arts community in the Triangle. But I also want to ask you for a favor. Please reach out to me. I'll be popping my contact information in the chat as well to let you know how to get in touch with me. I'd love to hear from you if there's any information or if there are any specific types of professional development programs that you feel are lacking in our area. That's what Triangle Artworks does. We just do professional development. So we're really always looking for great ideas. I just organize the Zooms. I don't actually come up with the ideas. So I need you to tell me what you're looking for. So again, I will be popping my information in the chat. Let me tell you how you can download the chat if you've never done this before. You can go to the chat bubble, again on your screen, open that up, and there will be 3 little dots on that. And if you click on there, it'll give you the option to download the chat. It's a really ugly looking file, but the information is there, I promise it. If that doesn't work for you, go ahead and reach out to me at Cynthia at Triangle Artworks, and I can send you my ugly copy of it. But anyway, that's enough for my commercial. I'm gonna turn it back over to you if any of you have questions. Again, thank you for everybody who joined us today. We really appreciate you being part of our programs.
I'm just curious about what each of you do. Philip shared that he was a photographer. Could someone else just share briefly what their art form is or what their teaching artistry is about?
Hey, I'll go. Hi, Cynthia. Hey, Shayna. Hey, Beverly. And hello, Julia. My name is Kaylee Ferguson, and I started out as a storyteller. I'm bilingual, so
Ooh, can't hear her. You're frozen.
Oh no, Kaylee, you are frozen.
yeah, my internet keeps freezing. All right, I said bilingual storytelling, in English and Spanish, and I also teach like culture through music and social folk dances, just a teeny bit of African dance. Baba Chuck used to come to our school, so Beverly, you probably were there and I didn't even know it. Yeah, and I'm based in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've worked with Shayna at Durham Arts Council. I didn't get into United Arts Council a long time ago, Julia, so I want to talk to you because I want to try again. And Arts and Science Council has been a huge supporter of my work. So that's me.
Right.
So just remember too, artists, sometimes it's just not a right fit at that time. So yeah, definitely do check back, come back with new ideas, refine old ideas. Sometimes it's just not a right fit, and could be another time.
Great, thank you. I do have a question about the United Arts Council application. Are you still requiring the video? Because I didn't work for like 2 years. I had to take time off even before COVID. So what do you do in terms of like if we don't have a video, is there a possibility of something else like audio or anything?
No, that video requirement is a firm need for that panel. You know, we've encouraged people to be creative this year. If they don't have something from this year, definitely try to think what you do have. What are some other, you do have to offer something. And so we've just encouraged people to be really creative with what they do. And then in turn, we'll ask our panel to please be flexible and understanding and to try to, you know, consider how else that story is being told through the application, whether it's through the resume, whether it's through, we've added on an optional letter of reference. So perhaps you've worked at a school and they can write some information for you, but what else can be paired with that video if it's not the most ideal of footage?
Okay, thank you.
Callie, there's a tip from Greg in the chat for you about how he composed his video. So just so you don't want you to miss that. So does anybody else have any other questions specifically for our panel? We'd love to hear from you. We did have a question about other professional development opportunities that someone asked in the chat. So I don't know, Shayna and Julia, if you have some that you'd like to suggest. I did put in the United Arts resource page for teaching artists, and I'm about to do the Durham Arts one as well, Shayna. But if you want to talk about any of those things, professional development opportunities for artists.
We don't have anything planned right now. We did do a lot of professional development tech-wise stuff to get our programs virtual over the summer. And we did a workshop with Triangle Artworks on the legal stuff over the summer as well. But this is an area where we need to improve, but definitely check out Triangle Artworks. They offer some wonderful programs and teaching artist specific professional development. There's Teaching Artists Guild online. There's also Americans for the Arts that offers a lot of programming. Yeah, and just check our website, our Facebook. We always have things posted there.
So I would echo those couple of suggestions and then also add the Kennedy Center has revamped their program recently and they're offering sessions. And then actually Greg and Sheila, who I see has joined us, and Jeanette are all involved in the International Teaching Artists Collaborative. Is it collaborative? Yes. And they're doing think tank monthly sessions, so that's a great place to check out as well. North Carolina Central University, I believe, has a teaching artist program as well. So definitely, you know, engage Google and search engines and see what other organizations are working to help provide that development, in addition to Triangle Artworks.
We definitely appreciate that. And we are working on a few things for this fall and the next year. So, you know, as we say, watch this space. So, well, does anybody else have any additional questions that they'd like to ask live? I see that we've got Shayna just put another link in the chat there. And if not, again, we like to be respectful of everybody's time. I don't like to boot people off, but I do also like to recognize that folks have things they want to do. I see people are now posting lots of links in the chat. So let's make sure we get that. And I may end up sending the file to everyone who registered just because I know some folks had to pop off. It's great to see so many of your faces here. I know that I I was really excited to see some of the folks that had signed up. And again, as I mentioned before, this will be on our YouTube channel. So for folks that had to leave early or who came in late, you'll be able to watch the full discussion. So again, I wanted to say thank you to everyone. I appreciate all you do for our arts community. We've had a really challenging year for a variety of reasons. And I feel like going forward, things are, looking up, and hopefully we will be able to all continue our work in really positive ways and make our community a better place. So just want to thank everyone for joining us today.